Hi and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave and this is episode 1307B and today's date is June 15th, 2017 and the title of the episode is It's Time for the People to Take Control and Remove the Elite. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now we know the deep state, they are never going to give up. They're going to push their agenda, their goals, until the very end. And one of their goals is to get Trump out of office. That is their goal, period. And we've seen how the deep state works because we've been watching them for quite a while. No matter what you think is happening, no matter if you think that they've stopped doing it, they always continue to try to go after their goals. Look at Syria, for instance. How long have they been trying to get Assad? Have they stopped? Even with a peace deal with Putin where Assad got rid of his chemical weapons, that didn't matter. Even with Putin calling out and saying you're supporting the Islamic State, you're supporting the oil convoys, it didn't matter. Even when the chemical weapons were proven to be false, fake, false flags, hoaxes, it didn't matter. They kept pushing their agenda. The same thing is happening right now. Right now, there is no Russian collusion. Tom Cotton, he pretty much laid it out saying, we've been looking at this for 6 months plus. We found absolutely nothing. We've been looking through pages and pages of documents. There's nothing here. What are we doing? Even Trump is out there. He said they made up a phony collusion with the Russian story, found zero proof, so now they're going for obstruction of justice. And it's another phony story. Because we know what Comey said. He testified and said, no, he didn't force me to do anything. But it doesn't matter. They're trying everything they possibly can to go after him. Even Ken Starr, he appeared on CNN. And CNN, they don't like it when you don't agree with them. They freak out. And they were asking Ken Starr. And he was the independent counsel appointed in the 90s to look into the Clinton scandals, including the Vince Foster death and Monica Lewinsky episode. And we know what happened there. That was a complete cover-up with the Vince Foster death. But I digress. Let's go back to CNN. CNN said, do you think there's a case there? Starr, it's too soon to tell from what I've seen. And of course, we don't know a whole lot. The answer is no, but it is going to be investigated, and so we will soon know. Obstruction of justice is really a very hard crime to make out. It's not just you want the investigation to go away, you suggest that the investigation goes away. You've got to take really affirmative action, and Director Comey said in his testimony that even though the expression was hope, he took it as a directive. But what we know is he didn't do anything about it, right? That is, that he did not dismiss the investigation or curtail the investigation. There's an expression of hope, so it becomes an interpretation. And Comey confirmed under oath that he'd never been asked to end an investigation for political purposes. And we could see right now, CNN, they didn't like this answer. They kept on pushing and pushing to make Ken Starr say something completely different. The thing is, there's nothing there. And they're trying to create something there. Now, the corporate news organizations were out there saying that Mueller was pushing for obstruction of justice. Now, is this true? We don't know as of yet, because if any legal expert was looking into this, they would say, okay, James Comey, who was the individual that he would have pushed around, he already testified that no, he didn't do anything. Now, we have to think about this. There was no Russian collusion. Trump was never under investigation. He never asked Comey to stop any type of investigation. Comey admitted it. So what is he looking at? He's looking at nothing. There's nothing there. And I think Trump wants Mueller to finish, to finally come out and say, I have found absolutely nothing. We can't find anything where Trump actually colluded with Russia, where there was an obstruction of justice with Flynn, or with his non-existent investigation. And once that comes out, the deep state, that whole storyline is dead. Now, Putin came out and he said something very funny. And I think he meant it as a joke, maybe not. He said that Russia is ready to grant James Comey asylum. that the former FBI director should be aware of that. Now, remember, we know that Edward Snowden also received asylum, but again, he was reporting on how the NSA was violating the constitutional rights of the people. Comey recorded a conversation on paper with the President of the United States and then leaked it to the press, a confidential conversation during his employment with the government as FBI director. It's completely different. And we see right now that, again, we have not seen this memo. I think CNN right now is suing to get that memo, because it's funny how that memo just disappeared and nobody can locate it. And nobody can say, hey, here it is, because they already read it to the corporate media. They already reported on it, so it's already out in the open. Produce it. Let's see it. And it's very difficult to understand why they can't. Why he didn't have it during his hearing. Now, what's very interesting right now is the White House Office of Management and Budget Director Mick Mulvaney. He says the administration is ready to begin a broad government reorganization that could include efforts to merge federal agencies and to let certain individuals go. And to me, this seems like this is the first part of draining the swamp, where Trump now is moving ahead and looking at all these different agencies. A lot of them are made up of Obama's staffers, where he brought them in over the last 8 years. And the deep state is entrenched in a lot of these departments, and it looks like they're making the move. Now remember, when we look at all this, the deep state has been using all these different tactics to delay Trump from doing the things that he wants to do. They're keeping him very busy with propaganda. But we could see that he's still doing things behind the scenes. And again, he's playing the game. He tried in the beginning writing the executive orders, pushing people saying, do this, do that. And I don't think he realized that the deep state was so entrenched, so controlling, that he couldn't get anything done. So as like a smart businessman, he realized what was going on here, and they started to take a different approach. Now, a lot of people didn't like this approach. A lot of people said he's part of the deep state. I mean, maybe the deep state will still control him. We don't know. And then when that time comes, we will call him out on it. But I think what he's doing right now is he's playing the game. He's taking away the control from the deep state and giving it to the people that he can trust. And those people that he might trust, maybe he doesn't trust, and he wants to see what he does with the information and the control. Because once he finds out what they're doing, it gives him a great opportunity to say, you know what, you didn't follow through, we need to get rid of you. And it makes it easier to fire someone. He kept Comey on for a certain period of time, and he started to realize what he was really up to. And this is a good way to figure out what these individuals are doing and watching them very closely to see what they do. And I think this is what he's doing, because a good businessman and a person who's in control takes a look at people who are your friends, takes a look at people who are your enemies, and you watch them, you observe, you see what they're doing, you see what people are up to, and you keep an eye on them. And I'm not saying spy on them, but you can see what they're all about and how they work and who they report to and what they do. And I think this is the game that he's playing right now. And a lot of people are saying, well, he has a lot of people in from the deep state. He's using them. He needs them right now, and he's using them as pawns for his ultimate goal. And eventually what's going to happen, these people will be removed. We're already seeing it happen. And every time he tries to remove something, or someone, I should say, the deep state comes out and pushes their thumbs on him, trying to say, okay, you're wrong, you can't do this. And when you see another person go, a high-ranking official, they're going to do the same thing over and over and over again. But eventually what's going to happen is the deep state's going to lose. We see it's already started, where Trump is taking the narrative. He's turning things around, and people are confused. And this is a confusing time because we were so used to, in the alternative media, to say they're part of the deep state, they're doing this. And when things don't make sense, we keep on that track. But we need to look at everything. Listen, if he turns toward the deep state and he starts doing things according to what the deep state wants, because we know what they want, I'll call him out on it. We'll all call him out on it. We've done it before. But we need to look exactly what he's doing and try to decipher what he's trying to do. And this is what we've been doing. And this is what we do with everything. So we'll keep monitoring him. We'll keep seeing what he's doing. We'll try to decipher what he's trying to do. And we'll put it together. And if it doesn't make sense and it looks like he's part of the deep state, well, then he's part of the deep state. But right now, it looks like he's fighting the deep state. Because if he was part of the deep state, they wouldn't try so hard to get rid of him. It'd be a waste of time. Did they try to get rid of Obama? No. The corporate media was with him. Did they try to get rid of Bush? No. They tried to get rid of Clinton? No. They did none of this. They were all on board with him. Yes, certain things happened during their presidencies, but we've never seen anything like this. Now, it looks like the U.S. Senate, well, they approved new sanctions against Russia for meddling in the 2016 elections where there is no proof whatsoever. And we can see that right now they're continuing on with, let's get Russia, let's get Russia. Now, when we look at the vote, we see the vote was 97-2. So 2 senators, they basically said, listen, this is not a good idea. Who are these 2 senators? Well, it was Rand Paul and Senator Mike Lee. They basically said, you know something, we're voting against this. Now, the vote was 97-2, so Trump, he can't do anything about it. He can't veto it, so it's going to go through. Now, these sanctions are on key sectors of Russia's economy, including mining, metals, shipping, railways. And you can see what they're trying to do is they're trying to make Russia pay for everything they've done, which is pretty much nothing. What they've done was they've taken control of their private Western Central Bank. What they've done was they created peace in all parts of Europe and throughout the Middle East. What they've done is they made deals with other countries and their debt has been paid down. This is what they don't like. Now, Germany and Austria, they slammed the U.S. sanctions against Russia. And this was Austria's chancellor and Germany's foreign minister said it appeared that the Senate bill was aimed at securing U.S. energy and pushing out Russian gas deliveries to Europe. And they accused the U.S. of having ulterior motives in seeking to enforce the energy blockade. Yes, this is what it's all about. It's about keeping control over Europe. And you have to remember, there's a lot of European companies that are participating in the Nord Stream 2 project, which introduces a completely new, very negative dimension into European-American relations. So we can see this is why they push this forward. This is why they want the sanctions. Now, what's very interesting is Putin is saying, listen, the U.S. and Russia, we can work together. We can look at our issues, we can discuss them, and we can work together and overcome these issues. He even went on to say that Russia will lift sanctions if Western partners drop their restrictive measures. But we can see that the neocons, the deep state, the central bank, they don't want this to happen whatsoever. Tillerson was out there, and Tillerson was saying the U.S. should develop a more flexible approach to the Ukrainian crisis instead of just strictly tying anti-Russian sanctions to the implementation of the Minsk agreement. Now, this is actually refreshing coming from a spokesperson of the U.S. government, asking Washington to look at the world differently and say, listen, we shouldn't hold Russia responsible for what is happening with the Minsk agreement. We shouldn't tie the sanctions to this. Actually, what Trump wants to do is he wants to remove the sanctions with Russia. But we can see the deep state, they're keeping the pressure on. They don't want this to happen. Now, out in Syria and out in Iraq, we've seen many different videos, these well put together videos about the drone footage of the Islamic State having these drones and how dangerous they are and how they're bombing different areas. And we looked at it and said, really, they have such advanced drones? How are they able to develop these advanced drones? Where did they get them? Because, again, they're a terrorist group. They're in a country illegally, in actually more than one country. Where are they getting this? And it turns out the Pentagon has confirmed that the Islamic State real drone program consists of unsophisticated, off-the-shelf drones. They're retrofitted, and they're really not that big of a threat. The whole thing, again, was propaganda to scare everyone. When you see all these well put together videos like they've done in Hollywood, this is a big budget production where they're putting this all together. A terrorist group that is in a country or many countries illegally, fighting every day, trying to remove an elected official, they have time to create all of this? No, this is coming from the intelligence agencies. So you can think of it this way. Some of it's coming from their covert drug dealing. Some of it was coming from the oil smuggling. And a lot of it's coming from our tax dollars, where they're creating these videos and producing them and showing to us to scare us. Now we see that the Syrian armed forces and the Russian forces, they have pushed the Islamic State out of Palmyra, and they are now pushed back to Deir ez-Zor, and the Syrian armed forces, they are heading in this direction. Now we understand that the United States, they brought in the HIMARS rocket artillery from Jordan into Syria, and the Russian Defense Ministry, they confirmed this, that yes, this has happened. And once again, the deep state, those individuals that are trying to reach their goal, they're the ones who are doing this. Now, this system was brought in to basically help the Syrian Democratic Forces, and we know the neocons, they've been supporting them, funding them. They're just terrorist groups. We understand the deep state supports them, and it looks like, you know, there's different factions within the armed forces and within government, and they're still running operations in this area. This is why Tillerson came out and said, listen, we never had authorization to do any of this stuff, telling the world that, yeah, it's not us, it's the deep state. This is what they were saying. Now, I wanted to turn towards the shooting with Scalise that happened in Virginia, and there were many different government officials that were practicing baseball early in the morning. And the man accused of opening fire on the baseball practice, well, it looks like he declared his love for Rachel Maddow of MSNBC. And basically, it's all over the place. He even wrote letters to her. And it's starting to seem like either he was on medication, he had mental problems, and many individuals out there are stating that he was radicalized by the left. And the Second Amendment Foundation released a statement on June 14th indicating their conviction that the shooting on the congressional baseball players was the result of Democratic hate speech. And they were out there saying, yes, he was pushed to this level because of what they've been doing. Now, we need to understand that there's many different agendas associated with this. And very interestingly, Steve Scalise, Congressman Steve Scalise, he was one of the individuals leading the fight against pedophilia. And we know pedophilia is part of the system that they have to entrap people, to blackmail them, to make them do what they want within government. And we can see more and more information about this is coming out. But we need to remember there's so many different things about what is happening. Now, Steve Scalise, he put out a human trafficking video, and he was explaining it. We know that Trump is going after human trafficking, pedophilia. And when we look at what happened here, we can see the many different agendas that are associated with all of this. One was the deep state. Their mission is to get the left all fired up by using hate speech. And this is exactly what they've been doing, because they're trying to accomplish certain things here. By getting these individuals to do some type of hate crime or to shoot people. They're trying to divide the country where people take sides. And this is what we're seeing right now. And of course, the corporate media, they're not saying this is an awful thing. They're kind of playing it off because the deep state wants to keep control of what is going on. And they definitely want the United States people, they want them divided. They're pushing agendas like gun control. We can see many of the individuals came out right afterwards and said guns are the problems. We need to get rid of them. Well, we saw in other countries, they were able to kill a lot of people with a truck, with a knife, with a bomb, with anything that you can get your hands on. And we would ban everything. Remember, these inanimate objects, they don't kill people. It's the person using them. And they kind of blew it when they started to use trucks, because we can now use that as ammunition to say, listen, trucks are a killer, cars are a killer. So really what you're saying, it's not the inanimate object that's killing, it's the person driving the truck, it's the person driving the car, it's the person using the knife, it's the person using the weapon. We need to look at the person. Are they on medication? Do they have a mental history? And most of these people can get any of these things. If he didn't have a weapon, he had a van right down the street. He could have hopped into the van and drove that van right into Scalia. Actually, he could have run him over and he might have been dead right now. Because all the guns in the world, it wasn't going to stop the van. Even if they shot him, he'd still roll into him. Now, what the deep state is trying to do is they're trying to keep the world from finding out the truth on how they operate, which is through blackmail, entrapment, scare tactics, false flags, and they're trying to keep their pedo ring from being exposed. That's what this really is all about. It's all of these agendas wrapped into one. It's not just one thing. It never is. So we can see that this is what they're trying to do, and who knows, there's probably many more. Now, we need to understand something. The deep state, they're losing control. The economy's falling apart. The Fed is bringing down the economy. And we've been talking about how this is going to happen in two phases. One where they say, oh, look, Trump, he brought down the economy. It was because of his economic policies. And then they're going to pump it up, and then we're going to have a downturn in the economy. Now, maybe they won't blame it on Trump. Maybe they'll just blame it on another country. But we can see that how they're starting to make the case of what they're going to do. Now, according to a United States Computer Emergency Readiness Team, US CERT, there was a bulletin that was put out. And the bulletin said, Hidden Cobra is leveraging malware called Delta Charlie, which is the brains behind North Korea's distributed denial of service, DDoS, botnet infrastructure being used against U.S. assets. Now, what do they mean by this? Well, both the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, they were part of the Hidden Cobra research released this Tuesday. They warn that Hidden Cobra is actively targeting the media, financial institutions, and critical infrastructure sectors in the United States and other global assets. They said a successful network intrusion attack could result in a temporary or permanent loss of sensitive or proprietary information, disruptions of regular operations, listen to this, financial losses, system files, and infrastructure, which is the power grid. So what this is saying right here is that they're already putting and broadcasting it out there that they do believe that North Korea is going to try to attempt something like this. And like I said, they will need to do this because they can't let anyone find out what they've been up to all along. They always hide their tracks. Look what happened during 9/11. They brought down Building 7 because there was information within that building. The Pentagon, where they were investigating the trillions and trillions of dollars, it just so happens that was the part of the building that was hit. So this time around, what they're going to do is all the criminal activity they were up to, which are kept in the records in different financial institutions, those will be wiped clean. No one will know. Money will be transferred away to different areas. And this has been set up for a very long time. It's not like all of a sudden the malware was developed. They already had the malware developed. They already had the systems ready to go. This is what all these tests were about throughout the past. So they always do this. They always set up these tests where they were testing the financial institutions with cyber attacks. But really what they were doing is they were implanting all these systems with the malware. And they were preparing it and getting ready to call it up when they needed it. It doesn't matter who's going to be involved and what country it's going to be, because it was already preset to go no matter what. And they'll just point the finger of who they want to blame. And we can see that they're almost ready to do this. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.